Hello everybody, welcome to the studio. If you haven't been here before, my name is Mel, and I'm really excited that we're going to paint together. So it's fall, and it's time for some Halloween themed paintings. So today we are going to work on our spooky graveyard. And what I love about this painting is that you can customize your little haunted house here however you like. You can put in as many trees as you like. I've got some crows and some bats in here. And then, of course, our little spooky graveyard. And we're only going to need 4 colors to complete this painting. So that makes things kind of simple and easy for us. So let me just go over how I've got things set up, and then we'll get to painting. First, I've got my canvas here on my easel. If you ordered the kit, you're going to use that pizza box that your kit came in as your easel. And I've just got mine set up here. I am using our palette paper. Whoops, a little floppy, so don't pick it up. But I've got white, black, green, and yellow paint. That's what we're going to use. I have got 2 paintbrushes, a big one and a little one, and that's what we're going to use. I've got a paper towel and my old cup here. Let's get some water in it. And we are ready to paint. So get yourself all set up, and when you're ready to go, I'll meet you right back here. Okay, so we are all zoomed in so that you can see the piece that I'm working on. And I've also got the original that we're using as our reference here. And let's talk about this for just a little minute. I'll bring it closer. The first thing that we want to start working on is our background. And you can see that it's a lot of green and a lot of yellow, and it works its way up to this dark, sort of spooky, Halloweeny night sky. So we're going to start down here, just above the bottom of our canvas, so that we can work our way up from light to dark. And once we've got this sky put in, we'll come in and put in the ground that we see here. So we're going to start with light and work our way up to dark. And I want to use my big brush for this. So I've got my big brush. Acrylic paint, which is what we're using today, likes water. So I like to give it a little dip in my water. And then I take the brush and I scrape it along the edge, just like I'm scraping a frosting spatula on the side of the bowl. But I won't tell anyone if you lick the spatula, because I do too. But we don't want to lick our paintbrush, so let's just scrape that off. And if it's still really wet, you can always just give it a gentle press into your paper towel. Because I'm starting with yellow, the first thing I want to do is come over to the very edge of my yellow and just pull a little bit away. You can see there's not a whole lot of paint on that brush. And what I want to do is decide where I want my ground to start. So I think that the best way to do that is for us to divide our canvas in half. And from there, we can see how far up, let me move my hand out of the way, how far up the bottom is. So it's not quite halfway up the bottom half. So let's use that as a landmark. It doesn't matter if your canvas is giant or really little. We'll keep everything sort of in the same size or perspective if we use that trick. So I'm going to put my finger here to mark halfway up my canvas. And then I'm going to find a spot just below, about halfway up from there. And it doesn't really matter if your ground is higher or lower, but I'm just going to draw a little bit of a wavy line. I like to have a little bit of hill and a little bit of valley and a little more hill. So let's get that line in. It doesn't have to be perfect because we can cover it up. And once we have that line in, because I want to keep things fairly light, I'm going to grab just a tiny, tiny bit of white, and then I'm going to come over and grab some more yellow. I'm getting about twice as much yellow as I am white. And I'm just going to start sweeping my way through, getting some of that yellow down. This is much brighter than what we see here, but that's because we want to get the yellow down and then start adding little bits of green to it, and we'll do what's called blending. And that's where we take two colors and sort of mix them together on our palette. So I just continue here to pick up little bits of white with lots of yellow. And you can see it's like I'm sweeping. I'm just going back and forth. Your strokes don't have to go all the way from one end to the other. You can just wisp lightly back and forth, back and forth. I'm just going to keep coming through here with my white and yellow until I've got about twice as much yellow as I do space down below, or even halfway up the canvas. We can always bring the dark down, but once we get that dark green on, it's going to be really hard for us to make this yellow lighter again. So I like to just get that yellow down. And we do want to move faster than our paint dries. So for example, if you live somewhere like Florida where it's really humid and the air's got a lot of moisture, your paint will stay wet for much longer than if you live someplace like Las Vegas where the air is really dry. So you just want to keep an eye on your painting. And every once in a while I do dip my brush in just a little bit of water to help keep this paint a little bit wetter for longer. And we don't need to fuss with it too much because you can see this looks nothing like our final product. We're just getting ourselves ready. So when you've got it almost halfway up and you're ready, don't wash your brush. Just sweep out what's left of your yellow. And then we're going to come in and get the very, tiniest bit of green. Just a little bit. And we're going to start just above where our yellow ends. Do you see how I've left a space here? That's important. We want to leave a little bit of a gap until we come all the way across. And it doesn't need to be a very wide band. Just one stripe working your way across. And then I start to sweep down into my yellow. And you can see I'm being fairly swift and almost vigorous with my paintbrush. And that means I'm just going back and forth with a little bit of pressure and bringing some of that green down into the yellow. And I want some of the yellow to come up and some of the green to go down. So if I swing back and forth like I'm sweeping at an angle, down to the left, down to the right, that will help me get that down into the yellow. So you can take your time with this. You don't want to pick up more green paint if you don't have to. And you don't want to come too far down into your yellow. Just enough for it to start to blend and get a little bit lighter. So take a few minutes and get yourself there. Remember, you want to work a little bit faster than your paint dries. And once you're there, we're going to clean and dry our paintbrush. So if you need to, you can pause the video now. And when you turn it back on, I'll finish showing you how to clean out your paintbrush. Okay, so what we want to do is take our brush and just sweep it gently on the bottom of our cup. And that will wiggle those bristles and make them let go of the paint. Then I give it a little tap to just sort of shake off any excess water and just sweep it across. Remember, we're scraping the frosting spatula. And then you can just press it on each side once or twice into your paper towel. See how a little bit of that yellow came off? That's okay. It's in the paper towel and it's not in my paintbrush anymore. I'm going to take my clean brush, and what I want to do is start down where my yellow is, and I'm sweeping in circles now. I'm just swirling my brush around and working my way up into that green. Sometimes I stop and I tap a little. This is called stippling, where you take your brush and you just push it down onto your canvas. So I'm using a combination of those two techniques where I swirl across and you can see that green coming down and the yellow going up. And then I just like to tap. And we want everything to be uneven because we want it to look like the yellow is just sort of this fog and light rising up from our spooky scene here. And I don't have a lot of green on my brush, so I can just keep working my way across. Sometimes I come up a little higher, sometimes I go down a little lower. And if my brush gets a lot of paint on it, I'm just going to stop and clean it again. We don't have to do that a lot, but as our brush picks up a lot of paint, I like to just take a little bit off. And I'm going to continue using these little swirly strokes and this stippling or tapping to create this sort of spooky fog that's coming up. And this isn't going to be our only chance to work on this. Once our background, we finish the green on up and our background is dry, we'll come back in and we can add a little bit more yellow. So if you get a lot of green down in the yellow, don't panic. Once it's dry, we can always come back and add some more in. And this layer is not about getting the fine detail of that wafty sort of wispy fog. What we're doing is just creating what's called an undercoat. It's sort of the foundation for our painting. And I'm just going to keep swirling and tapping until I'm happy with it. So what I'm going to do is I'll probably time-lapse this part of the video and speed it up in editing so that you don't have to sit here and listen to me ramble about tapping and swirling. And once that little time lapse is over, go ahead and pause until you're ready. Just remember, I've said it before, I'm going to say it a bunch of times until we're done. You've got to move faster than your paint dries. So let's keep working our way through. And once you're there, come back and see me and we'll finish working our way up, okay? I'll see you in a few minutes. I'm just going to pop in here and tell you something real quick. Let me show you. I'll bring this a little bit more forward so that you can see. But when we sweep lightly, we get sort of this wispy, windy look. And when we tap and swirl, things become a little bit more cloudy. So you decide which one you like best and just keep working your way through. Okay, we're going to go back to really fast painting now, and I'll see you in a couple minutes. Okay, so from our ground, we've brought that yellow and green about halfway up, just a little bit more. And now I'm just going to sweep any extra paint off onto my paper towel. I'm not going to wash it. I'm just going to give it a sweep so I don't have any excess paint on there. And I'm going to pick up some green. I'm still using my big brush. And I'm going to start adding green and taking it all the way to the very top of my canvas. Now, as you come down, if you want, you can bring a little more green down into your yellow. That's totally okay. You may undo some of this wispy or cloudy work that you did, but we are going to take some time to come back in and add another layer. I feel like mine is just all a little too bright. So as I'm adding that green, I'm just coming down and just barely wisping a little bit in there. And this is like, you know, putting ketchup or condiments or mustard on your hot dog. You pick out which ones you like and do it your way. We just want to make sure that the bottom is lighter than the top. And see how I'm swirling down here on the bottom? That's going to help when I come back in later. I can add a little wisp to it. It's just going to make the air look like it's moving. Like we've got some clouds or some wind in that fog. And keep picking up your green and working your way to the top. Now at this point, I'm not going to mess with this anymore until we come back after our drying break. But I am going to keep taking that green and getting myself all the way to the tippy top. And when we get there, we're going to add a little bit of black to that wet green and come down. And that's what's going to make that night sky so dark. But what I want you to do for now is just keep working your way up to the top with that green. So let's get ready for some fast painting. Okay, so we've brought our green all the way to the top. And I'm going to bring this a little closer. It still looks kind of divided, and we'll be able to blend some of that with our next layer. But I want to point out, you can see that it's still very streaky in my sky, and that's okay. What we're going to do is grab a little bit of black. There's still green on my brush, but I'm going to get just a tiny bit of black and come right along the very top of my canvas. And then just like we use the green to blend into the yellow, we're going to use this black and blend it into our green. And it's going to deepen that top part of the sky. I'm adding just a little bit more green because my paint is starting to dry. And remember, we want to work faster than our paint dries. So I'm just coming back and adding a little bit more green so that it's ready and able to blend in with my black. And I'm going to bring the black down from the top of my sky. Sometimes I come down a little further in the corners. And just like with the yellow looking wispy and light, I want the black to sort of wisp its way down. I want it to look like that night sky is up there. And just creating what we call some dimension or some depth. So you can go back and forth between your black and your green if you need to. Add tiny bits of black. It's always easier to come back and add more than it is to take it away. So you can see I'm just picking up little bits at a time and letting it wisp its way down into my green. And then sometimes I pick up a little bit of green and just add it in there to make sure that it sort of softens that black and it doesn't look like a stripe. It lets it blend. And that's going to help enhance the spookiness here of our Halloween scene. And this trick works with any kind of night sky we're trying to do. If we were painting a sunset, we would make it darker up here at the top because that's going to help give it some dimension. So now I'm just going to clean out my brush. I've added enough black. If you need to, you can pause here and come back after you're done. All I'm going to do is just make sure I've got enough green here, sort of in the middle. Because this yellow area is pretty much dry now. So what I want to do is come back up with a little bit more of that yellow to wisp over this edge. So we've got our green all the way to the top. We added our black, we blended it down, and I added just a little more fresh green here so that when I come back up with the light yellow, I can wisp it in layers over the green. So take your time. I'm just going to use this empty brush to blend a little bit more of this green down into my yellow. And when you're ready, come back and we'll work on adding our last layer of yellow fog before we move into our graveyard. So once you're ready, come on back and I'll see you then. See you in a few minutes. Okay, so now we have the undercoat of our background done. We're going from light up to dark. But what we want to do next, let's bring this in a little closer, is create this layer of sort of floaty yellow fog that's going to come up from our ground line right up until where the green starts to get dark. So let me get the camera turned around and I'll show you how to do it. Okay, so our background is on. And what we want to do is take our large brush, we're going to dip it in the water, And this time we're going to leave all that drippy water in the bristles, and I want you to bring it over and press that water out of your bristles onto your palette paper. I've already done a little, you can see it here. I add a little yellow to it, and even a little tiny touch of white so that it's nice and light. But it should be like watercolor paint now. So if I pick this up, you can see that's just going to smush all around nice and loose. And I'm going to come in and use that stippling technique we used earlier. And just tap. Tap in some uneven, sort of fluffy edges. You can even sweep it around. And that's what's going to make our fog that we see over here where it comes up. So little bits of yellow. If it needs a little bit of lightening, you can even add a tiny touch of white. Sometimes I'll even take my fingertip and just tap a little bit, especially along those edges, because it makes it look nice and fluffy. We want that to look like the fog is just coming up there, nice and fluffy. Adding little bits, tap, tap, tap. And I use my finger and just tap and smudge that lighter fog up into my sky. Little bits at a time. And then I just tap. And that's what's going to make our fog. And we can keep adding more wherever you want it. I'm going to come down with a little more yellow and white and tap along down here toward the bottom. Now you don't want to mix things up too much. As we bring that lighter stuff up here, we may fade it a little, that's okay. But this is where, remember the hot dog, you put whatever you want on your hot dog. So we're going to do that same idea with our painting. You can add as much or as little fog as you like. Sometimes I like to swirl with my finger instead of just tapping, because that sort of makes it look like fog and mist. And I just do tiny bits at a time. So we're going to switch to some time lapse, and you can take your time, and once you've got all your fog the way you want it, come back and see me, and we'll start working on our foreground here where our cemetery and our house are going to be. All right, you ready? 1, 2, 3. I'm going to bring this closer for you to see. You can see all those swirls and different textures and light and dark. That's what you want to have happen. You want lots of different layers of yellow and green. And just take your time. If you need to let it dry and come back and put in more, you can do that. At this point, though, I'm pretty happy with where I'm at. So I'm going to stop. And I'm going to start working on my ground. So get your background the way that you like it, and when you're ready, come back and see me, and we'll start putting in that ground. Okay, my ground is ready to go in, so I'm going to clean my paintbrush, the big one. Remember, just sweep it across the bottom, back and forth, back and forth. Make sure that you get all of that paint out of those bristles. And again, this time we don't want all that water, so drag those bristles across the edge of your cup, press your paper towel, and then pick up some black. And what I'm going to do is just come right along my line here and put in the edge of my ground. And you can change the shape of your ground if you want. The line doesn't have to be perfect because we're going to mess it up in a little bit with some grass and a tree, and then I'm going to fill in from the line we made all the way to the bottom with some black paint. Now, once we get done with this black, we want to make sure our painting is completely dry before we move on with anything else. So you can always use a blow dryer to help dry it. You can take it outside and set it in the sunshine, or you can just take a break and come back in about half an hour. And it should be dry. It's up to you. So let's get this black filled in. Once it's all filled in with one smooth layer, make sure you clean your big brush, and I'll see you in a little bit when your painting is dry. Okay, now our goal, our background is dry. We're going to start putting in some of the objects in our painting. We've got our haunted house, we've got a tree over here on the left, and another little one over here on the right. So I'm going to start with my house so that it appears to be the furthest back. And then when I bring in my trees, I can let my tree come over the front of my house, and that will help build in dimension. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my small brush and get a little bit of water on it and work just a little bit of water into some black paint. I want it to get a little smooth and inky, but not too drippy. My green paint is drippy. It just dripped all over me. That's why you don't want to lift that up. Okay. So I'm going to take my black paint and my small brush and use them like a pencil. And you can pick wherever you want to put your house. I'm going to put mine over on the right side. So I'm going to start by drawing the top of my house, the peak. That way I can pick how tall I want it to go. And I'm going to start just a little ways down from the top. I like to leave some room so I can put a weather vane or an owl or something standing on the top. So what I'm going to do is draw two sides of a triangle. Come down on one side and down on the other. And this is an old broken down house, so our lines don't have to be perfect. From that point, I'm going to draw in the sides of my house. So I come just in a little bit from the left edge and come down. And it's not a straight line, it's a little angled. That helps with sort of the haunted, spooky nature of my house. And I did it again on the other side. So I've got two angled lines for the roof and two lines that angle a little bit on the edge for the sides of my house. And from there, we can start adding different things. Like first, I'm just going to put in a rectangle for the door. And remember, our house is kind of old and falling apart, so things don't need to be perfect. I can add two more rectangles and then two more for the windows. But you can have one big window. It's entirely up to you. So this is how I do my windows. I just put in a rectangle. And then I'm going to come up above and put in two more rectangles. Now we're going to paint those in with yellow a little bit later to make it look like light. But for now, all we want to do is get in our basic shape. And you can see here in the attic, this window has a C. I think it's easier to put the C on after we paint the black. So once we have our door and our windows in, I use my skinny brush, that smaller brush, and I'm just going to fill in all of these areas with black. And I like to use my stroke coming down from the top down in a line, because then if there's any texture left in my brush strokes, it makes it look like wood is going up and down. I'm going to have to come across a little bit here above, but then I just bring that up and down stroke. And we're going to fill all of this in. Take your time. Remember, your lines don't have to be perfect. That's the great thing about us painting an old, broken down house, is nothing is perfect. Whereas if we were trying to paint a picture of a new house, we would want to be much more careful. But because it's old and falling down, nothing is where it's really supposed to be, is it? Okay, so our goal here is to get this all filled in. Whoops, look at there. I went down over that line a little bit. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to let it dry, and then I'll cover it up when I put in the yellow. That's going to make the light look like it's glowing from inside the house. So get yourself to this point, and when you're ready, we'll start working on our trees. Okay, so while our house is drying, the black paint there, we're going to work on our tree. And I'm still using my small brush and black paint. And I'm going to come over to the left side and make my tree. You can see the tree is wider at the base. Let's move this over a little more so you can see it better. It's wider at the base and gets more narrow as the branches come out to the end. So I'm just going to pick a spot and draw the base of my tree. Just 2 lines angling in toward one another. And work my way up. I just keep letting it go up. It doesn't have to be perfectly straight. And when you're ready, put in a Y. From there, we can take our branches, and I like to let the lines get all kinds of funky. Maybe put some wiggles and squiggles in them. And we're just going to start bringing them out as far as you like in either direction. You can make your tree a little wider if you want to. But remember, it's fall and Halloween and it's spooky. So all of our leaves have probably fallen off of our tree. And we're just going to let these branches come out wherever they want to go, or wherever you want them to go. Just remember, the line is thicker where it's coming out of the tree, and it gets thinner as we work our way toward the edge. And we can put in as many or as few branches as you like. And I never manage to paint the same tree twice. It's always just a little bit different. So take your time. Remember that tree branches have V's and Y's, not L's. So you want to make sure that as your branches come off, you've got V's instead of an L or a straight angle like we have here on our window. Let's just keep adding in as many branches as you like. The more branches, sometimes the spookier the tree is. Even some broken ones. Maybe a little broken one there. And at this point, I'm pretty happy with mine. I know there's a little bit of a shadow. It's hard to see with the light. I'm trying to move it over for you a little bit. You can see. It's hard to see, but we are going to add some highlight of yellow later, and that will make it a little bit easier to see. So don't worry about that for now. You can even add another one over here on the other side of your house. I like to put 2 trees in this painting. You can put 3, you can put 1, whatever you do. It's entirely up to you. So you can pause the video for a little bit while you get in both of your trees, or however many trees you're going to put in. And when you're ready for the next step after your trees are in, come back and see me, and we'll start working on adding the yellow to our windows. Okay, now our trees are in and our painting should be dry. I'm going to clean my small brush. Remember, sweep it and wiggle it on the bottom of your cup. Drag it across the edge a little bit. Even press it into your paper towel to dry off the extra. And we are going to make a light yellow. So I want you to take just a little bit of white and move it over to the edge of your yellow and swirl it in. We want that yellow to lighten up just a little bit and become a little lighter and more lemony. And we'll use this color to fill in our windows. And we don't want it to be perfect. We want it to be a little streaky and a little spooky. So I don't worry about the edges being perfect, because I can always come over that with some more black and clean it up later. I just want it to look like there's some light in this house that's glowing out the windows. I'm going to fill in all 4 windows and my door. So there's window number 4. Adding a little bit more up here. And then a little bit down here in my door. And here I'm really only worried about the edges. There we go. Just a little bit. When I paint in the door, it'll look spooky. So get that yellow with a little bit of white into your windows and your door. And when you're ready, we're going to start adding some highlights to our tree, because all that light is going to be glowing out onto our tree and we'll be able to see it better. So take your time and I'll see you in just a minute. Okay, so let's take that small brush with our yellow and white that we were using earlier to fill in our windows and door. And what I want to do is use the skinny edge of the brush. And I'm going to come along any sides of my branches that are facing my house and just start adding little tiny streaks of this yellow and white. And what that's going to do is it's going to look like a little bit of light reflecting off of those parts of the tree. And I try to stay to things that are on the same side as the house. So I don't want to put a lot over on the left because that's where the shadow would be. So I want to keep it all here to the right, facing my windows. And I use short little skinny strokes here on the tree and let them be messy and overlap, because what's on the edge of a tree? Bark. And it's rough and scruffy, and it's not going to be all perfect and even either. So that makes my painting a lot easier because I don't have to try to keep everything so neat and tidy. So remember all those branches that we sort of lost up here in this dark spot of our sky? As we come in and add these little tiny bits of highlight, we're getting those back. We're able to better make out the shape of our lines. Oh, picked up a little more yellow there. It got a little crazy. And we're just going to blend this in. Just keep adding little bits of it at a time. Okay, so we are still adding our little bits of our yellow and white highlight here to our tree. I can't even see where some of my branches were, so I'm just adding the yellow in that dark section to make it look like there's a branch there. And that's okay, I can do that, it's my painting. The further away from the building and the light that I get, the less light that I use. But just little bits. Okay, so remember, we can always come and add more, but we can't really take it away. So I'm going to stop for now and start adding some light over here. And this time we're going to add most of our light to the left side and underside of our branches, because this tree is on the other side of the house. So we want to make sure that our reflection and highlight, our light, is closest to the house, where the light is coming from. This is our light source. Sort of like the sun or a lamp in this case. Just adding little bits of light to our branches here. Just little highlights. And that's about all I'm going to do there. So get your trees to where you like it, and when you're ready, we're going to come in and start working on the highlights on our house. Okay, let's start doing to our house what we did to our trees. I'm still using my small brush, and what I want to do is start adding little bits of highlight here as well. So I'm going to come along this roof line and just put in a few little strokes of light. And that makes it come out again so that you can see it. Just little bits. I'm going to add my window to my attic, so I'm just going to make a big C. And now it looks like the light is glowing out of that window. And I can even come along and add a few short vertical strokes. You can even come horizontal above or below your windows. We just want to add little bits of texture and light here. So we don't want a whole lot, but just enough that whoever's looking at the painting can see that those lights are glowing out the window and hitting little bits of the house. So just little bits, not a whole lot. Less is more. Just like that, little bits. Now in this one, I even have a crescent moon on the door, but we're going to add that after we put our door in. So take your time putting in your highlights, and when you're ready, we'll start adding some more details. We'll come in and add the window panes to our windows, we'll add our door, and we'll start putting our tombstones in our cemetery. So I'll see you in just a few minutes when you're ready. All right, we've added in our highlight, and now we're going to go back to some black paint to add in more detail. So let's get that small brush nice and clean. Dry it off. I'm going to grab a little bit of black, and using this skinny edge of the brush, I'm going to make a giant plus sign in each of my windows. And that's going to make it look like window panes. And they don't need to be perfect. It's an old wonky house. They can be a little wonky as well. I'm also going to add a smaller rectangle in my door. And if I just make it just slightly smaller than the door frame, bring it down, it looks like that door is a little bit open. Like it's just creeping open, and you can almost hear the squeaky sound that you know it's going to make. So we've got our door and our window frames. You could add a chimney to your house if you wanted. Sometimes I like to just put a little triangle with a rectangle, and it looks like an old chimney pipe. We'll add some highlights to that. And we're also going to put in our tombstones. So remember, if it feels like I'm going fast, you should always pause the video and come back when you're ready. At this point, we want a rectangle for our door, the plus sign in each of our windows, and if you'd like to add a chimney or even a weather vane, put a big plus on the top of your house. You could make it a church with a cross. It's entirely up to you. We can also come in and add our tombstones. So when you're ready, I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm just going to take my small brush and black paint and create an upside down U and fill it in. Close it off at the bottom and fill it in. And that's going to look like a tombstone. We'll come back in a few minutes and add some highlight to it. You guys should be experts at that by now. Some of them I make tilted over because they're old. They might be falling down. The edges could be a little rough and broken. But I'm going to add about 5. You can add as many as you like. But I've got 3. I'll add one more here. And then just to make a little more space, I'm going to put a 5th one on this side of the tree. We can change the painting however we like. It's your painting. So let's review. We've added our black detail, the plus signs in our window, our weather vane, a chimney, and a door. And we're also going to put in as many tombstones as you like. I've put in 5. And when you're ready, we'll come back in and start adding some grass and other little details before we start doing a lot of the final foggy work and highlights. We're getting really close to being done. All right, I'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, our black details are in. We have a few more we want to add. So, small brush, black paint. I would like to add some grass. So what I'm going to do is come down along my tree first. And let me show you on the back of this so you can see. I'm going to use the skinny edge of the brush. If the skinny side is up and down, I get a skinny line. If the skinny edge is side to side, I get a thicker line. So we want to use that up and down skinny edge. And what we'll do is put our brush down where we want to flick our grass out. So let's say that this is our tombstone. Just make a little one there. For example, we're going to take that skinny edge of the brush and flick. Flick out around our cemetery here because no one's been mowing this for a while. And that's going to make it look like grass. We can put that around the edge of our trees or our house as well. So let me show you again. I'm just going to come in and start flicking some grass. Mostly around the base of my tombstones. It's going to be a little hard to see until we add the highlights, but we know it's there. Bring some around over by my tree. You can add as little or as much as you like. Add little bits around wherever you want to put some. Doesn't look like anyone's been mowing here for a while. So we're going to let this grass get all crazy and wild. And then when we add our highlights to it, like we did the other stuff, that's when the real magic happens. And we start to see all of that shape. Just going to clean up a little line here. So add as much or as little as you like. And then we're going to add as much or as little as you like. And then we can add our bats. Let me show you. I've got one flying here in the sky, and we've got one hanging here from the tree. And I'm going to turn this over to show you how we do those. So for the bat that's flying in the sky, I start off by making an open curved V, just like I would make a bird. And then I'm going to put a little circle in the middle of it. So we've got a circle with a curved line coming out to the left and another one coming out to the right. But what we want to do now is add those little curved parts under the wing to show the webbing of them. So I make a curved line and another curved line and fill that in. Now we've got that shape to the bat wing that we're looking for. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. Curved line, one more, fill that in. And if you want, you can even put 2 tiny little ears on your bat, just like that. So let's add a bat to our sky. Pick wherever you would like to do it. I'm going to put mine right here so it looks like it's flying up. So curved line, another curved line, add in my circle in the middle, and then scoop once, scoop twice, fill it in. Other side, scoop once, scoop twice, and fill it in. And then I'm just going to put 2 tiny little dots for ears. And now I've got a bat hovering there in my cemetery. Now, if you want to do one hanging upside down from the tree, let's turn this back over and take another shot at that. For the hanging upside down bat, I like to do a teardrop shape. Pointy end at the top, and fill that in. And then I just add the little circle at the end for the head and 2 tiny ears. And our bat is hanging upside down. So if you want a bat, pick a spot in your tree. Go ahead and create your upside down teardrop with a pointy end on top. Add your circle. and your little lines for ears. Remember, we'll come back and add highlights in just a minute after they're dry. So I'm going to let you take your time with this, and you know the drill. Come back and see me when you're ready. Okay, let's add a few more highlights, shall we? We're getting really close to being done. To add our highlights, remember we want to use some yellow with a little bit of white, and I'm using that small brush. I've cleaned it. And just like with our tree, we want to add our highlights on the sides that are facing the building or light source where the light is glowing. So on my bat, I'll add just a little streak around the right side there. Just little taps, little streaks of light so that we can see the silhouette of our bats. And on our tombstones, I just come across the top a little bit, down the curve, across that top and down the side. And that makes it look. Now we can see the shape away from everything else. So don't add too much, just little bits, because we just have little bits of light streaking out here to our graveyard. And we can do the same thing with our grass. So when you're ready, just take little bits of that white and yellow. And I didn't even put grass in here before, but now I can just come through with that yellow and flick it up and around the base of my tombstones or my headstones. And that makes it look like this grass is just growing all over here. Little bits wherever you like. Let's keep adding in. And once we get that all in, we can come back in and add the last layer of our fog and our lights. The other thing I want to do is I like the little crescent moon window in my door. So using my white and yellow on my small brush, I'm just going to use the little edge, add a window to my door, and a little dot for the doorknob. And then I can even streak a little light by going side to side, right below where that door is open. Just a little bit, like the light's just sneaking out there. All right, you guys, get yourselves to this point, and then we're going to come in and add some stars to our sky. I'm ready for stars. How about you? I'm just going to clean my brush out one more time, my small brush, and I'm going to take tiny bits of my yellow and white mixture on one little corner of my bristles there. And I'm going to come in and just place some stars wherever I like in my sky. Some are tiny, some are a little bit bigger. I put some close together. There are more at the top than toward the middle, because that's where that night sky is. So just little dots, and they don't have to be perfect circles. Mine are not perfect circles. We are not going to worry about that. Not today. It's not important. We just want a little hit to look like a star out in our sky. Just like that. Put in as many or as few stars in your sky as you like. And when you come back, we're going to do our final step, which is adding some more of that fog rising up over our foreground here. All right, I'll see you in just a minute. Look at how far we have come, you guys. We have our building, we have our trees, we have our bats, we have our stars, we have our tombstones. And now we're ready for one more little bit of fog. So I'm going to switch back to my big brush. It's nice and clean, but I'm leaving the water in it. And I'm going to let that drip onto my palette. And just like before when we made our fog, We're going to add a tiny bit of yellow and even a tiny bit of white to it. And we want it to be really wet and loose. And what we can do is come along and start, remember we tap and then smudge and swirl. So I'm tapping in that wet, loose mess, and then I'm spreading it around with my finger, swirling it, doing a little tapping, and that's what's going to make it look like the fog is rising up. One more time. Little bits, and then smudge it around and let it swirl. That fog is just coming up off the ground here. Maybe a swamp witch lives here, who knows? But I'm going to bring that almost all the way down to the bottom. And I don't want it to be even everywhere. Some places are going to have a little bit more than others. Just dropping some off, swirling it around. Letting that spooky fog rise up over our tombstones here. A little spooky, huh? It's kind of fun though, right? You get to finger paint a little bit and everything just sort of comes together with this last little swish of fog. And there we have it, our spooky graveyard. All right, you guys, there we go. We've got our spooky graveyard. How much fun was that to paint? I really hope you'll send me pictures of what you did. I can't wait to see it. Now, if you are a member of the Paint with Mel family membership, in your kit you've got some extra crafts in there. So you can put some pumpkins with some googly eyes together, do the same thing with some leaves. And I think there's some little wooden cutouts in there of pumpkins and ghosts and extra stuff for you guys to paint in and just have some fun with. You can use your leftover paints from your kit. So I hope you had a great time, and I can't wait to paint with you again. So until the next time you see you guys, happy painting. Bye-bye.